Hey, just a heads up, this video will contain minor spoilers for Transformers Rise of the Beasts and potentially major spoilers. Not super sure about that at the time of writing this. If you don't want even minor things spoiled, go watch the movie for yourself. Or keep watching and complain that I spoil it for you. It's up to you, man. When I first made the original Transformers Iceberg back in early 2021, I thought that was the last iceberg I would ever make. That changed. And after I started making these icebergs, I began thinking to myself that I missed a few things with the Transformers iceberg. So, I decided to make a part 2. Somehow was able to release that and the cryptid iceberg in 1 month. Don't ask me how, I have no idea. But in the months following the release of part 2, I began to realize that I was still missing some pretty obvious topics. So I planned out a third iceberg, but never got around to making it. That was until Rise of the Beasts was announced to be releasing in June 2023. So here we are, June 2023. Rise of the Beasts is out, and Transformers 1 is coming out next year. There's no better time to release the final installments in the Transformers Iceberg trilogy. Well, trilogy until I eventually do a soft reboot and get Mark Wahlberg to narrate these instead, but until then, it's a trilogy. So with all that out of the way, let's begin. Just kidding, one more thing. I used to have YouTubers as entries in some of my older icebergs because of their impact and contributions to the fandoms I talk about. But I've since stopped doing that because I was tired of getting comments going, why are there ads for other YouTubers? They don't belong in the... It's like, whatever, I don't care. So I was originally going to have entries about TJ Omega, Road Russell, Paperplane, and Kian Carlisle. But I scrapped those entries, but I still want to, suggest some videos from them. Go check them out. They make great content. Here's some of my favorite videos from them. Once again, they're really good. Go check them out. But yeah, now let's begin. Just kidding. One actual last thing. If you like the video, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe for more icebergs. I've done other Transformers content. I've done Star Wars stuff, Halo, Godzilla, cryptozoology, and all sorts of geek and nerdy stuff, all kinds of things. Call of Duty, Battlefield, Gears of War, all kinds of stuff. I don't normally ask to subscribe or anything like that because it just feels weird, but I feel like I kind of have to. Okay, now on with the video. Michael Bay toy. Yes, out there somewhere is a Michael Bay action figure. Created by some designers at Hasbro, this toy of Michael Bay was created as a thank you for Michael Bay's work on the 2007 film. This one-of-a-kind Michael Bay action figure rose to prominence once it was discovered that Paramount Studios had a picture of the figure placed inside the original Transformers 2007 DVD as an Easter egg. The figure itself is an Alternators Battle Ravage figure from 2004, just with Michael Bay's head on there instead of Ravage's, and the addition of an Autobot symbol. Megatron in Robots in Disguise 2015. Originally, Megatron was planned to return in Robots in Disguise 2015, after he abandoned the Decepticon cause at the end of Transformers Prime. Concept art of his Raid 15 design was created, with the idea that he would transform into a laser pistol as a nod to his original G1 incarnation. However, it was decided not to use Megatron in the show, and so this design would go unused, and Megatron's fate in the Alliance continuity remains a mystery. Beasties Transformers. So in Canada, Beast Wars Transformers was renamed into Beasties Transformers. This was done because Canadian laws prevent companies from advertising violence to children. And since the name Beast Wars sounded too violent, they changed the name of the show to Beasties. And before somebody asks, does that mean in Canada they changed the name of Star Wars to Starries or something? No. If a show or movie is made in Canada, then it has to follow that law. And since Beast Wars was produced primarily in Canada, the show had to have its name changed. Last Bot Standing. Releasing from May 2022 to August of the same year, and written by Nick Roche, Last Bot Standing is a 4-part miniseries that tells a hypothetical final Transformers story. It seems to take place in a variant of one of the IDW G1 continuities. However, it was purposely made vague so that this story could be looked at as canon to most G1 continuities. The story follows Hot Rod, or Rodimus, stranded on an alien world colonized by humans in the far, far future. Rodimus is one of the last Cybertronians alive in this universe, as the Great War had drained the entire universe of energon, meaning that most Cybertronians either starved to death or ran out of energy so they rusted away. Rodimus travels across this world trying to live in peace, but of course, something has to happen. And that's all I'm gonna say. This story is still relatively new, and is one of the last Transformers stories published by IDW. So if you think this story sounds interesting, go check it out. Transformers Human Alliance. Human Alliance is an arcade rail shooter game developed by Sega and released in 2013. This game is famous to the Transformers fanbase for having an insanely weird story and some really crazy dialogue.
Awesome side swipe! You're just like a ninja!
Thanks for the compliment. That was a high-tech stunt.
Honestly, it's like a G1 episode, but set in the Bayverse. The plot has some dude named Jay and a Nest agent named Vanessa chilling out with Bumblebee. Jay's got some weird device that Starscream and the Decepticons want, so they show up and attack the trio.
Starscream, you have no business here.
Shortly after battling Starscream and Laserbeak, the Autobots and Nest head off to investigate an earthquake created by the Decepticons. There they battle Brawler, and kill him.
Sideswipe! Well done! No!
They then travel to Africa. Shockwave shows up, loses a fight with Optimus, bails, and then Scorponok King shows up, and then the Autobots gotta fight him. They're able to take back Jay's device, which is apparently what's been causing multiple earthquakes around the world. Then the Decepticons start attacking the US West Coast.
It is really bad. The whole city is burning.
We have to find a way to disable the ship.
We are counting on it now. The armor is weak, though.
Certain parts were damaged when we took it from the enemy. We have more battles to fight. Let's go.
Transform and roll out!
This attack is being led by Megatron, Starscream, and Skywarp, who was actually using his teleporting ability he had in G1 for like 2 episodes, so that's pretty cool. Dies though, so, rip. The story comes to an end with the trio traveling to Canada, where they're being chased by Megatron. Optimus Prime shows up, and the 4 of them are able to take on Megatron and destroy an Energon tower that Megatron was using to try and destroy the Earth. Then Optimus Prime gives his worst speech in the entire franchise.
Megatron will never let it go. The battle against Decepticons will continue. I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message that, as if we Autobots are on the Earth for one day, last drop of blood will be drained for protecting the human beings against Decepticons.
In 2018, a sequel to Human Alliance will be released, called Transformers Shadows Rising. Following the plot of Human Alliance and Dark of the Moon, Vanessa and Jay travel with the Autobots to the middle of the Pacific Ocean to attack a Decepticon underwater base. There they battle Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp. I guess Starscream didn't die in Dark of the Moon, and Skywarp apparently didn't die in Human Alliance. After they infiltrate the base, they discover that the Decepticons have cloned various Autobots like Bumblebee and Sideswipe. There they travel to Wales, where they find out that Grimlock, Scorn, and Strafe are causing destruction. Not by choice, though, they're being controlled by the Decepticons. They then travel to China to free a KSI base from Decepticon control. I don't really know why they'd want to do that, but whatever, I guess. They free the facility, but oh no, the Decepticons captured some KSI scientists and are bringing them to the moon. So the Autobots travel there, and Nemesis Prime shows up. Optimus and Nemesis fight, but suddenly Megatron shows up and kills Nemesis.
Those insects tried to analyze me, but I just used them. Bring
Optimus and the Autobots beat him up, and Megatron is launched into space, declaring that he'll be reborn. Then Optimus Prime gives another bad speech.
The light rises, and shadows are gone. There's a thin line between being a hero and being a memory. I am Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots.
Here's hoping we get a third game. The Rebirth Parts 4 and 5. Originally, Season 4 of G1 was going to be 5 episodes instead of 3. The original plan was that the Rebirth was going to be 5 parts long, and so a plot and script were written for those 5 parts. However, due to budget cutbacks, they had to take apart that 5-part storyline and squeeze them into 3 episodes. This is why so many of the newly introduced characters barely do anything, like Six Shot, for example. It's very annoying that these episodes never happened, because it would have given G1 100 episodes. Without those last 2, we're left at 98. What happened to Shockwave in Transformers Prime? During the finale to Transformers Prime, the TV film Predacons Rising, Shockwave gets mauled by a bunch of Terracon Predacons, and everyone just kind of assumed that he died there. But then, later in the film, he shows back up, noticeably damaged, and convinces Predaking, Skylynx, and Darksteel to work with the Autobots and fight Unicron. And then he bails. He doesn't work with the Autobots to take down Unicron. Dude just completely dips. Years later, when the sequel series, Robots in Disguise 2015, began airing, that some of the Decepticons left alive at the end of Transformers Prime would show up in the show at some point. And that did end up happening for some characters. Starscream and Soundwave both appeared in various episodes. Megatron was going to show up, but I already talked about that. So that just leaves Shockwave and Arachnid. And neither of them showed up in Red 15. It can be assumed that Arachnid was eventually defeated because, one, I doubt the Autobots would just let her and her zombie Insecticon army chill out on Cybertron's moon, and secondly, because we see Insecticons in Raid 15, and they are not zombified. And it's not like the Fall of Cybertron Insecticons, it's the Prime Insecticons. Are they the same species? God, the Cybertron games just should not be canon to the Prime and Red 15 universe. Just they don't work. Anyways, as for Shockwave, nobody really has any idea. Sure, he could have just been arrested by the Autobots following the film, but that's kind of a boring answer. As for if there were any plans on Shockwave appearing in Red 15, we actually have no idea. However, it doesn't really seem all that likely, as Red 15's showrunner, Adam Beechin, was asked about Shockwave's status, and he simply said he doesn't know. My guess is that Shockwave just hid away in his secret lab on Cybertron. I'm honestly surprised they didn't make Shockwave the big twist villain of Red 15. Like, imagine if it was revealed that Shockwave infiltrated the Autobot High Council as Longarm. Not only would it be a cool nod to Animated, but it would wrap up his story pretty well. Why didn't they do that? Mega Empress. Mega Empress is a weird character. Created for the Transformers Unite Warriors manga, she's basically Megatron but a woman. She was created via Megatron's spare parts, and upon her creation, she immediately began planning to take over the Decepticons. Armed with a fusion cannon and a giant axe, Mega Empress declared herself to be the Empress of Destruction. She was also the master at seduction. No, I'm not joking. Mega Empress was extremely skilled at seducing people, and would use this ability to gain loyalty from various Cybertronians. Though some of her loyal minions weren't loyal because they wanted to bang her, some were straight up created by her. These are the 4 guards, her bodyguards. There's 4 of them, I know, it's not a very creative name. A group of female Cybertronians that turned into helicopters that she built. And together, the 5 of them could combine into Megatronia. Mega Empress has remained a very obscure character, and hasn't really done much outside of the Unite Warriors manga. And by not much, I mean not at all, because she has literally never appeared outside of that manga. There was a toy of her made though, so that's neat. Friday the 13th, 2009 is canon to the Bayverse. So your immediate response to this statement is probably, no, you're wrong. And you're right. But maybe you're wrong. You see, the 2009 Friday the 13th reboot, at first glance, has nothing to do with the 5 Michael Bay Transformers films. However, if you look closer, you'll notice that one of the film's main characters is played by Travis Van Winkle, who plays Trent in the first Transformers film. And in Friday the 13th, he plays a character named Trent. Not only that, but both Trents are bullies and jocks, and Michael Bay produced this reboot. So there's a fan theory that these two Trents are the same character, which, if that's the case, means that Jason Voorhees exists in the Bayverse, and Trent is very much dead. Transit is a character who's become kind of a fan favorite, despite him not really showing up very much. Most people know him from Rise of the Beasts, and by know him from Rise of the Beasts, I mean not from Rise of the Beasts, because he was scrapped from that film. We only know that he was going to be in the film because 1, his vehicle mode was seen on set, and 2, because his CGI render was found on Takara Tomi's Rise of the Beasts website. Because of his design and the fact that he turns into a bus, a vehicle mode that's surprisingly not very common in the Transformers franchise, people took a liking to him, and were very disappointed that he was scrapped from the film. Here's hoping that the deleted scene featuring him is either released as a Blu-ray extra, or put back into the film as part of a director's cut or something. Human Alliance. Now you're probably wondering why I have Human Alliance on here twice. Well, I don't. Transformers just likes to reuse titles and names. Human Alliance was a toy line featured in the Revenge of the Fallen toy line, Dark of the Moon toy line, and the Transformers 2010 toy line. The idea was to have human allies partnering up with Cybertronians in the war against the Decepticons, or sometimes against the Autobots. Each figure came with a human ally that could drive the Cybertronians' vehicle form, or sometimes hop up on their arm or back and fire off guns there. Does not seem like a very safe idea, though. I feel like sitting up there is just asking to die. Originally, this lineup used characters exclusively from the movies, like Michaela, Sam, Epps, Simmons, and Lennox. But this quickly changed once the Dark of the Moon toy line started up, with a ton of new characters being introduced, like Deadcliff, Tungsten, Sparkplug, Spike Witwicky, Sergeant Noble, Major Altitude, Sergeant Recon, etc. Now, some of these names may sound familiar. That's because some of them were named after G1 characters. I assume this was because they didn't really have many options, like who else was there? I mean, I guess there was Leo, Dutch, Morschauer, Zimmerman, Eddie, or Carly. While this toy line was like 95% Autobots, there were actually some Decepticons. For example, Frenzy was partnered up with Barricade, which, makes sense. But then you had dudes like Sergeant Chaos and Master Disaster teaming up with the Decepticons. These dudes were mercenaries and rogue nest agents that I guess were okay with being enslaved. Oh, and Dylan Gold from Dark of the Moon was partnered up with Soundwave, which, that one makes sense. Silver Knight Optimus Prime. So in Age of Extinction's toy line, there were a few variants of Optimus Prime called Silver Knight Optimus Prime. This was just Optimus Prime in his Age of Extinction and Last Night appearance, only he's silver now. While a lot of people believe that this Silver Knight design was just a toy original design, like Stealth Bumblebee, there's actually evidence to suggest that this design was going to be in the film at one point. And by evidence, I mean it was flat out confirmed to be in an earlier draft of the film. In this earlier draft of Age of Extinction, Optimus Prime was going to take on this Silver Knight look upon discovering Lockdown's armory after he and the Autobots escaped Lockdown's ship. While this upgrade was removed from the film, a similar scene was included in which Optimus Prime grabs a sword from the armory and frees the Dinobots. Though remnants of the Silver Knight upgrade still remain in the movie, as this upgrade was how Optimus Prime gains the ability to fly at the end of the film. So yeah, if you were confused as to why Optimus Prime can suddenly fly at the end of the film, that's why. They scrapped a scene and they just forgot to scrap the other stuff that connect to that scene. Galvatron Imperius. So in the Unicron trilogy, Megatron goes from Megatron to Galvatron, back to Megatron, then to Galvatron, back to Megatron, and finally back to Galvatron. That wasn't the original plan, however. Early ideas for Transformers Energon had Megatron referring to himself not as Megatron or Galvatron, but instead Galvatron Imperius. This would have happened, but Hasbro stepped in and said that they needed to call him Megatron in order for them to protect the trademark on his name. Purple Soundwave. In the Marvel G1 comics, Soundwave wasn't his usual shade of blue, but instead purple. And he was purple for the entire comic run. Well, in the US. The UK comic had him blue. So why was this? Well, there's two theories. The first was that this was an attempt at making Soundwave look more distinct from the other Decepticons, since a lot of them already had blue as part of their color scheme. This was the main theory for quite a while, until another theory took its place. You see, in one of the very first Transformers commercials, Soundwave's color scheme was lavender instead of blue or purple. And so, people have speculated that the artists working on the comic simply mistook his color scheme for being a light purple. Dark of the Moon gets leaked. Several months before the release of Dark of the Moon, the comic adaptation of the film was put on Amazon. And this Amazon listing contained several pages of the comic that you could actually read. The first 7 pages, and the final 7 pages of the comic for some reason. And because of that, not only was Sentinel's betrayal spoiled, but also the entire ending of the film. This rightfully ticked off a lot of people who worked on the film, and so the ending of the film was changed. The original ending had Optimus Prime killing Sentinel in a way that was a lot less brutal, and he accepts a truce with Megatron. So if you didn't like the ending of the film and think it was way too brutal, thank Amazon for spoiling the film, causing the team working on the film to change it. Also, because of this leak, Michael Bay refused to let IDW adapt Age of Extinction or The Last Knight. And he refused to let IDW create prequel comics to the film, which is very weird because those prequel comics didn't spoil anything. If anything, they help the film. So if you really wanted some more IDW prequel comics set in the Bayverse, the blame can be traced all the way back to Amazon. Video game cut content. Like with every video game, there's some stuff from various Transformers video games that were scrapped for one reason or another. Here's some cut stuff from a few of the Transformers games. In Transformers Armada the video game, or Transformers PS2, the 2 levels in the Amazon were supposed to just be 1 level, and the Starship level was originally supposed to be 2 different levels. And originally, there was supposed to be a volcano level as well. Not just like a boss fight with Megatron, but like an entire level. There were also various scrapped enemies from the game, like Lightning Rod, Heavy Tank, and even Dead End. There was also a jet bike that would have been drivable. And finally, there were plans for a multiplayer mode, and even a co-op campaign, but these plans were scrapped. In Transformers 2007, the video game, in the game's files, you could find various scrapped levels. For example, there's Bonus 1, which was a bonus level where you would play as Bumblebee finding and throwing 10 different giant donuts around the map. There were multiple Hoover Dam levels cut from the game as well, 2 of which had Bumblebee evacuating humans. Then there'd be a level where you'd play as Optimus Prime, looking around Hoover Dam for Bumblebee, and even briefly facing off against Megatron. You would also have a boss fight against Bone Crusher, while you defended Bumblebee. Then there were some Decepticon Hoover Dam levels scrapped, 3 of which had you play as Blackout, destroying various military targets, which would lead into a boss fight with Bumblebee. And finally, there was one last Hoover Dam level where you'd play as Megatron, and your objective would be to destroy the dam. There was also an alternate skin for Bumblebee called Evil Bumblebee. I assume this was going to be like a cheat code reward or something. There were also various scrapped characters from the game. For example, Ratchet was originally going to be playable, but was scrapped pretty early in development. And finally, there's Pepsi Payload, a standard Decepticon enemy that turns into a truck covered in Pepsi markings. I guess Dispenser was just too cool for this game. In Revenge of the Fallen, the video game, which is the most underrated Transformers video game, might I add, originally Bumblebee's stealth skin was going to be in the game at launch, but was scrapped and later added back in with DLC. There's also 3 different scrapped multiplayer maps, like West Canals, Cairo Ruins, and Cairo City. There was also some scrapped levels. For example, in the Autobot campaign, there was one level in Shanghai where you would have to destroy some strange tower that looks like an Energon collector. There was also a level in West Coast where you'd have to follow around a probe. There was also a level where you'd have to destroy that same Energon collector thingy in Egypt. There was also supposed to be survival missions where you'd face off against endless waves of enemies. As for the Decepticons, there'd be a level in Shanghai where you'd race around. There was also a mission where you'd fly around the Atlantic chasing after a probe, and there was going to be a mission in Egypt where you'd have to destroy some entrances to some tombs. And finally, at one point in the game's development, you were going to be able to play as the Combaticon Scout, the Combaticon Warrior, and the Combaticon Sniper. In War for Cybertron, there's a ton of scrapped melee weapons that were found in the game's files, like the Prong Dagger, Hunting Dagger, Lancing Spear, Longsword, Broadsword, Fighting Staff, Warhammer, Serrated Blade, Halberd Axe, and the Ceremonial Staff. There was also a Repair Raid turret that was scrapped. In Dark of the Moon, the video game, there's also some various scrapped weapons, including the Gatling Gun, Repair Ray, Scatter Blaster, and a variant of the submachine gun. There was also a scrapped cutscene that was found in the game's files, which features Optimus Prime broadcasting some message. I have no idea what he's trying to say, however, because there's no audio. In Fall of Cybertron, there was originally going to be a scene in which Cliffjumper explains the golden ages of Cybertron and how he went on a mission to Tiger Pax to look for a Sentinel shield generator for the Ark. He also mentions how he fought a giant worm. Also, the EMP shotgun from War for Cybertron was meant to return, but was scrapped during development. Broadside was also planned to appear in the game at one point. Concept art of him reveals that he was supposed to turn into the Energon transports seen in chapters 6, 7, and 8 in the game. Springer and Prowl were both considered for the game as well, but both were scrapped. Finally, in Fall of Cybertron, there was going to originally be a boss fight where you'd play as Grimlock, and you'd have to battle a giant Insecticon beetle. In Rise of the Darkspark, Barricade from War for Cybertron was cut from the game during development. He was going to be playable in the game's escalation mode. And finally, in Transformers Devastation, Ratbat was originally going to appear during Soundwave's boss fight and help his master battle the Autobots. But for whatever reason, he was removed from the game fairly late into development. Beast Wars Megatron's real name. So Beast Wars Megatron's real name isn't Megatron. Or I guess it is his real name, but it wasn't his original name. So what was his name before that? Well, in the original Beast Wars cartoon, it was never revealed. However, in 2 different continuities, he was given 2 different names. In the 2021 IDW Beast Wars comic continuity, Megatron's original name was Galavar, while in Beast Wars Uprising, his original name was Gnashteeth. Personally, I like that name more than Galavar, but both are solid. Pablo. When Wheeljack's design in Rise of the Beast was revealed, it was controversial to say the least. After the near-perfect design from Bumblebee, many people were pretty annoyed that Wheeljack's design in Rise of the Beasts was such a departure from his iconic look. And because his van alt mode had the name Pablo on it, fans began to refer to him as Pablo instead of Wheeljack. This started out as like a negative thing, making fun of the character, but over time, it seems that fans have actually warmed up to this design, and the whole Pablo meme is now looked at much more positively. Unit E. Unit E was one of Hasbro's many attempts at making a shared universe between Transformers, G.I. Joe, Gem, Micronauts, Mask, etc. Originally a one-shot comic released at Comic-Con 2011, This comic story had various Hasbro properties being put together by a team called Unit E, who live in a space station outside of space and time in order to face off against the Micronauts villain, Baron Karza. This little comic wasn't meant to be a full series. It was just Hasbro's way of testing the waters to see if people wanted a connected universe. They must have gotten a good response, because in 2013, the logo for the Unit E organization began appearing in the background of some Transformers Prime episodes. And in the final episode of Prime, Jack, Miko, and Raph were recruited into the organization by Agent Fowler. This went nowhere, but it was originally supposed to. The original plan was that this would lead into a Mask series, a Gem series, an Inhumanoid series, a G.I. Joe series, and a Candyland series. And all of these shows would take place in the same continuity, and there'd be this big Unit E crossover event. This didn't happen for reasons that haven't been fully revealed. After these plans fell through, Unit E was pretty much abandoned, though Jack, Miko, and Raph were originally going to make guest appearances in the first season of Raid 15, now all grown up as members of Unit E, but these plans were scrapped. Carnage and C Minor. The original G1 cartoon is well known for its animation mistakes. However, no episode in the series is as broken as Season 3's Carnage and C Minor. This episode is often regarded as one of the worst in the entire show because of its animation mistakes. For example, dead Autobots like Huffer and Brawn both show up in the episode. Ultra Magnus literally picks up Scrapper and Hook like they're dolls. Defensor fights alongside Hotspot, who's meant to be a part of him. Broadside and Blaster are shown to be extremely small next to Ultra Magnus. Devastator and Superion are shown to be the same height as Soundwave. Bone Crusher is seen fighting alongside the Autobots. Soundwave's shown with an Autobot symbol. Characters just vanish between shots. Soundwave's mouth plate rarely moves when he talks, and there's much, much more. To top this all off, Ask Vector Prime confirmed that the harmony sung by the people of the planet that the episode takes place on creates time-space anomalies, which means, in-universe, every error in this episode actually happened. So I guess Huffer and Brawn got briefly resurrected for a split second, only to die again? BotBots. In 2018, the world was introduced to the BotBots, a sub-series in the Transformers brand that focused on chibi-like characters who turned into mundane items. The plot behind this series was that some Energon accidentally turned a bunch of stuff from a mall into Cybertronians, and during the day, they chilled out, disguised as everyday things. But at night, they come alive and do some wacky stuff. Instead of Autobots versus Decepticons, or Maximals versus Predacons, or Optimus versus Mal'Ganis, the BotBots have a bunch of factions called Squads. BotBots was created to introduce kids to the wild world of collecting tiny little figures. And in March 2022, the line got its own animated series, and is pretty much exclusively a comedy series. Now, this sub-series has been pretty controversial in the Transformers fandom, and people have claimed the show is like Teen Titans Go, Powerpuff Girls 2016, and Thundercats Roar, if anyone remembers that. Now, I have no opinion on BotBots myself, but this whole argument is very funny to me, because Transformers is a universal franchise, meaning that there's stuff for every single age range. So, like, if you want more, like, adult stuff, go read the comics or, like, watch some of the shows. The show's not for you. Like, oh well, who cares? Fortnite. In June 2023, Optimus Prime and Optimus Primal's appearances from Rise of the Beasts were added into Fortnite, along with some other Transformers-themed accessories. So now you can have Optimus Prime whipping Nene with Adonis Creed, Piccolo, Claire Redfield, Anakin Skywalker, Mikasa, Miles Morales, Neymar Jr., Beast Boy, Frankenstein's Monster, Carnage, Mr. Meeseeks, Han Solo, Snake Eyes, and
Mr. Big!
the Bayverse Constructicons. So the Constructicons from the Bayverse are a bit weird, as in, there's a ton of them. Throughout Revenge of the Fallen, you can see various long hauls, mixmasters, rampages, etc. doing just whatever. Being a part of Devastator, fighting the Autobots, looking for Sam, dying, all the classics. So what are the Constructicons in this universe? If there's so many of them, does that mean they're all just like drones with no sentience? It's never stated in the film, but it's widely believed that the Constructicons who turn into Devastator are the real Constructicons, while the other ones are just drones or clones based on them. This is the theory that I personally go with. Although at the same time, that means that like one of Rampage's drones was like willing to make a deal with Sam, so that shows that he's got some kind of sentience. Although he is a Bayverse Decepticon, so he's probably just like lying, but still, that shows some kind of sentience, right? Backing up this theory is the Tales of the Fallen IDW comic series, released only a few months after Revenge of the Fallen. While the IDW prequel comics aren't canon, it is interesting to see that the writer of issue 3, Chris Mowry, used the idea of Constructicon drones. So, are the Constructicons drones, or are they sentient? I don't know. All I know is that Longhaul's design is awesome.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
The age of extinction is upon us. To survive, one crucial thing is needed. Up to 6 times long-lasting power from Duracell. No ordinary battery lasts like it.
We now return to the Transformers.
Female Sunstreaker. Sunstreaker never saw an appearance in Transformers Animated, but he does exist in the show's continuity. He's mentioned in the Allspark Almanac too, as being captured during the Great War. But then, 5 years later, in the complete Allspark Almanac, Sunstreaker is mentioned again, but this time, they're referred to as a she. So we got a bit of a continuity error here. This continuity error was eventually turned into lore via Ask Vector Prime in 2015, where he claimed that a character named Natasha Pyernak did some wacky time travel stuff and somehow changed Transformers Animated's timeline. And in this revised timeline, Sunstreaker was now born a woman. Rid 01 originally had 52 episodes. Originally, Robots in Disguise 2001 was going to go on for 52 episodes. However, due to low ratings and low toy sales in Japan, the studio behind the show decided on reducing the amount of episodes to 39. Rollbar and the Sonic RS. During the filming of Age of Extinction, fans noticed an odd car on set, that being the Sonic RS. This caused fans to debate for months on end whether or not this car was actually a Cybertronian or not. It didn't help that there were some shots of the car in the trailers where it got the focus, and there's some shots in the trailers that show the car moving without a driver. This debate lasted almost until the release of the film, where it was finally confirmed that the Sonic RS was not a Cybertronian. But then it was confirmed it was a Cybertronian, just not in the film. Much like Landmine and Longarm from Transformers 2007 and Stratosphere from Revenge of the Fallen, Hasbro took the Sonic RS and used it as a vehicle mode for a character in the film's toy line, that being Rollbar. Rollbar wouldn't be the only character created from a random vehicle from Age of Extinction. In the same toy line, Hasbro released Viacon, a Decepticon based on the SUVs used by Cemetery Wind in the same scene as the Sonic RS. It's not mentioned anywhere, but I assume because this dude's name is Viacon, it's meant to imply that all the Cemetery Wind trucks are Cybertronians, or KSI drones called Viacons. Corey Burden's brief role in War for Cybertron. Corey Burden has actually played Shockwave in 3 different Transformers projects: G1, Animated, and War for Cybertron. Well, kind of War for Cybertron. Shockwave wasn't in War for Cybertron normally, but you could unlock him as a pre-order bonus from GameStop, or you could later purchase him as DLC. When using Shockwave in the game's multiplayer, he doesn't actually speak. Instead, Corey Burton provided Shockwave's voice in a GameStop pre-order commercial. This by itself isn't super notable, but what is notable is that Corey Burton went on to talk about how he regretted doing that commercial. He felt that the jokey nature of the commercial was out of character for Shockwave, and because the performance was so rushed, he thought he didn't sound like himself in the final commercial.
Shockwave, you're in charge now!
Excellent. Again? Soundwave, transfer. When your hit percentage exceeds mine, you may choose the soundtrack.
Lever Transformer. In Fall of Cybertron, in Chapter 5, Cut and Run, you can find the Lever Transformer, who is a very sad character, I think. When you find him, he does a little dance. So, he must be happy, right? Well, his alt mode is that of a lever. So this dude, every day, is just being grabbed and used by a ton of people every day. Does he get paid for this? Is this his job? Was he born into it? Did he choose it? Does he like being used by people? I should probably stop talking. Animated Cloaked Villain. So for some reason, in the Japanese opening to Transformers Animated, a cloaked villain is seen floating behind the Earth. This character was never in the show, or even referenced. It's been theorized that this cloaked figure is either a representation of evil, or is actually Megatron, as Megatron shows up later in the OP with a big old silhouette. Regardless of the intention, this cloaked mystery villain has never made an appearance in any Transformers animated material. But he does appear in the Transformers Legends manga. Granted, it's a cameo appearance in the background, and it's a Creo version of the character, but it's the closest thing we've ever gotten, and probably will ever get, to this oddity getting any story material. Skylynx's Two Halves. A lot of people tend to forget this, but Skylynx can actually split into two different forms. His space shuttle form and his Lynx form. These aren't two different sentient beings, but instead two different entities controlled by the same consciousness. While he's continued to use both of these forms in comics, a lot of people still tend to forget that he can do this, since a lot of fans have only watched the cartoons, movies, and played the games. And Skylynx has only used this ability once in G1, and not at all in War for Cybertron. Thrust is Scorponok. In the Japanese version of Transformers Energon, Transformers Superlink, there was an episode that was never dubbed into English. This episode was titled, Return, Our Scorponok. This episode revealed that Scorponok in Energon was created by Alpha Q out of the spark of a wandering Decepticon spirit. And because Scorponok's voice actor was also the voice actor of Thrust from Transformers Armada, and Thrust died at the end of Armada, many have speculated that Scorponok is actually just a reincarnated Thrust. Now, outside of the voice actor and the wandering Decepticon spirit mentioned, there really isn't any evidence to suggest that Thrust is actually Scorponok, but it's an interesting theory. It's also pretty odd that this episode was never dubbed into English. I'll also mention this. While the Dreamwave Energon comic is set in its own continuity, it is worth mentioning that both Thrust and Scorponok appear in issue 30, so at least in that continuity, it's confirmed that they're not the same character. Legacy cartoon. So you know how the War for Cybertron series ended on a cliffhanger? Well, we're probably never going to see what happens next. But there were plans at one point to do a sequel series to War for Cybertron, based on the Legacy toy line. However, Netflix rejected the show, as it didn't fit with the company's mandates at the time. And in order to keep good relations with Netflix, Hasbro refused to see if any other streaming service or television network were interested in hosting the series. And so the Transformers Legacy cartoon never happened. All we know about this cancelled series is that it would have been lighter in tone than War for Cybertron, and it would have been set centuries after the events of War for Cybertron. Scrapped IDW plans. In June 2017, writer Meredith Scott revealed some plans that she had for IDW's original Transformers continuity that she didn't have time to tell. Some of these ideas included an issue of Titan's Return focusing on the McAdams crew defending their bar from being destroyed, Ironhide and his private security firm going on wacky adventures, having an issue about all the original female Transformers from G1 forming a team. I think she means Elita 1's group from the G1 episode, The Search for Alpha Trion. Metroplex would have gotten an avatar he could use to walk around and talk to people on Cybertron. Elita 1 would threaten to restart the Great War after taking over Kaon and creating a militarized city-state. And everyone on Cybertron would be initially freaked out by Elita 1, since her color scheme is literally the color of Energon. So it'd be like if you met a dude who was painted in blood. There's some more things that she mentioned, so I'll leave a link to her blog post about all of this stuff in the description below. We also know about 2 different cancelled miniseries. There's Spy Games, which would have been about a group of superpowered Autobots consisting of Blur, Mirage, Windcharger, Jazz, and Hubcap being brought together by Ultra Magnus and Springer. This team would be created in order to investigate Bonsaitron and Tarantulas, who are leading a group of Decepticons who have cloaking devices and pretender technology. Then there's Legacy of Rust, which would have starred Punch and the human Jimmy Pink. It was supposed to be released sometime in the early 2010s. What's sad about this series is that all 4 issues were written, but production on the comic was put on hold because of the Chaos events going on. And sadly, this miniseries never left production. Also, IDW's rebooted universe was cut short. Very short. Well, I say that, but we have no idea how long they planned on making this new continuity. But considering the fact that the original continuity lasted from 2005 to 2018, it's safe to assume that this continuity was originally meant to go on for quite a while. Sadly, we don't know a ton about what they had planned, but we do know some stuff that was cut in this new continuity before IDW lost the rights. Like how the character Rubble was originally created to be a human who somehow got transported to Cybertron. Though there is one thing we know for a fact IDW was planning before losing the rights to Transformers. A Transformers project that pretty much everyone wants to happen at some point. Transformers Collision Course was a cancelled miniseries that would have been released in 2022. This would have been an extremely ambitious crossover between G1, Transformers Prime, the original IDW continuity, the rebooted IDW continuity, Transformers vs. G.I. Joe, Regeneration 1, the Unicron Trilogy, Hearts of Steel, Beast Wars, Robots in Disguise 2015, War for Cybertron, the video game, the Marvel G1 Comics, Beast Wars 2, Transformers Animated, Transformers vs. the Terminator, Last Bot Standing, and even Rescue Bots. Yes, we almost got a Transformers multiverse storyline, which would celebrate pretty much most of the franchise's history. And it would have been worked on by various longtime IDW writers, like Nick Roach, Brian Ruckley, Simon Furman, and more. So why was this cancelled? Well, it's simply because IDW was losing the Transformers license, and didn't have enough time to create this series. The series was cancelled very late into production, so art was created for it. It's a genuine shame that this didn't end up happening.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
Beast Wars Season 4. Originally, Beast Wars was going to go on for 4 seasons, with the 4th season being about the Maximals leaving prehistoric Earth and chasing after Megatron the Predacons throughout space. Other plot points included the original G1 Megatron attempting to possess Beast Megatron, and the Maximals would have a tough time trusting Tigerhawk. This season was scrapped due to Hasbro wanting to create Beast Machines, so the decision was made to end the show with Season 3. At least that's how the story goes. You can find a lot of threads online about Season 4 of Beast Wars, and to see people discussing plans that were apparently shared on now-defunct websites. The closest I could find to evidence for these claims being true is an archived Fox Kids fall press release statement from February 10th, 1999, in which a show called Beast Hunters is mentioned as a sequel to Beast Wars about the Maximals battling Megatron, who's still in his trans-tech body, and the Predacons. This show pitch was reworked into Beast Machines. But if you could find, actual evidence about this Season 4 being, true, let me know in the comments. I couldn't find anything. Megatron's dead friend. So in the Generation 2 comic series, Megatron dissolves the Cybertron Alliance and begins a new war with the Autobots and Earth, because his friend was killed by Earth's military. Now, who is Megatron's dead friend? Well, for nearly 20 years, nobody really knew. In fact, for those 20 years, this was the only image we had of him. It wouldn't be until the Transformers Legends manga that we would get some more info on the dead friend. And even then, it wasn't a lot. He was apparently a peace envoy and once healed Megatron back to health. Ask Vector Prime would reveal his name was Kiloton, and after learning that Megatron had gone missing, he spent millions of years traveling the universe looking for him. That was until he got tired and became a peace-loving scholar. So yeah, Megatron's dead friend, aka Kiloton, doesn't really have a lot going for him. Though he does have a toy. Kinda. In 2015, Ask Vector Prime would confirm that Kiloton transformed into a revolver. This revolver was released as a toy in the 1980s, as part of the Microchange toy line. However, Hasbro never actually released this toy as a Transformer, because... well, obviously. So while not official, this is the closest we'll ever get to a toy of Megatron's dead friend. Yandere Arachnid. In the Japanese dub for Transformers Prime, Arachnid is a bit of a different character. Instead of her normal personality, a cruel and scheming murderer who loves torture, in Japan, she's a yandere. No, I'm not joking. She's portrayed as being obsessed with collecting the heads of, quote, handsome boys, and is trying to get Jack, not to tick off RC, but instead because she's shown to be attracted to him, calling him a hunk, cute, and darling. She also threatens to spank him, sings love songs, and even at one point proposes they get married. Obviously, she would have just killed him afterwards and mounted his head on her wall, but yeah, in Japan, Arachnid was a yandere. Roller in Dark of the Moon. So the Autobot Roller for the Dark of the Moon Cyberverse toy line was modeled off of one of the many Autobot soldiers you can see at the very beginning of the film piloting the Ark. As I've mentioned in past Icebergs, and this one, Hasbro will often take existing vehicles in a film and create a Transformer around that. So with Roller, this was the opposite of how Hasbro usually does things. They took a CGI model and gave him a vehicle form, although at the same time they did give him some new things, like an arm cannon and some rover kibble. Regardless, it's kinda odd. As for which soldier he was meant to be in the film, I got no idea. But I'm gonna say it's this one. That's Roller. That's canon now. Ironhide, Grimlock, Lugnut, and Sea Spray in Prime. Transformers Prime had a variety of different characters that were meant to appear in the show. These characters were either removed entirely or reworked into another character. Sea Spray was going to appear in Season 3, where it would be revealed that he had survived his encounter with Dreadwing, and would have a personality based on Quint from Jaws. He would have also had a whistle as one of his main weapons. This whistle would apparently terrify Viacons. Sea Spray was cut from the show due to time restraints placed on the show's team. Grimlock was also planned to appear at one point. And yes, unlike the Raid 15 Grimlock, this was meant to be the same Grimlock from Fall of Cybertron, and plans were in place to have his design be similar to his game counterpart. He was cut from the show for an unknown reason, though Grimlock and the rest of the surviving Dinobots did appear in the Transwarp Prime comic miniseries Rage of the Dinobots, and its sequel, Beast Hunters. However, these aren't canon to the show. Actually, take this Grimlock thing with a pinch of salt, because I can't actually find any source to this claim. Maybe Hasbro wanted him to appear in the show because of Age of Extinction, but since Prime ended in 2013, a year before Age of Extinction, they cut him? Not really sure about this one. Then there was Ironhide, who was going to be one of the main characters of Transformers Prime. He was even in the initial lineup of characters. He was scrapped and replaced with Bulkhead for two reasons. One, the personality given to Ironhide in this show fit more with Bulkhead, so they just decided to use Bulkhead. And the second reason was that Hasbro was afraid that children would be confused as to why Ironhide was alive, despite him dying in Dark of the Moon. A different continuity. And finally, Lugnut was going to be in Transwarp Prime at one point, and would have had Breakdown's role in the show. This was first revealed via promotional blurbs released for the episode Deus Ex Machina, which mentioned Lugnut by name. It would later be revealed that Lugnut was replaced with Breakdown because the show's team wanted a land-based Decepticon instead of another Decepticon who flew. Demolisher versus Scavenger. There's a bit of confusion surrounding two different characters from Revenge of the Fallen. Demolisher, the big guy that showed up at the beginning of the film, transforms into a white mining excavator. However, due to the only scene he appears in taking place at night, you can't really see his color scheme very well. To make matters worse, the first toy of him released made him red. Not only that, but his appearances in Revenge of the Fallen's video game and comic adaptations were also red. So what happened? Well, his video game appearance, comic appearance, and toy appearance were all based on his concept art, which was the exact same as his normal design, except instead of white, he was red. This was actually his CGI model for quite some time, but for whatever reason, they changed his color scheme at the very last second. And this is where the confusion comes in, because Scavenger, a character that you only see the vehicle form of in the film, was given Demolisher's original design as his robot mode. So because of this, toys of Scavenger are often confused with Demolisher, and vice versa. And it doesn't exactly help that Demolisher hasn't seen a new figure since 2010. Transformers Combaticons. Released in March 2023, Transformers Combaticons is a 22-minute long fan-made pilot for a Transformers series that sadly doesn't exist. Created by Keegan Carlisle, along with a variety of different animators, artists, and musicians, Combaticons tells the story of the Combaticons. Obviously. Going on a little adventure, and that's all I'm going to say about it, because you can go watch it for free. And I'm not going to spoil a passion project that was released like 3 months ago. It received a pretty positive reception, and another Combaticon project was put on Kickstarter, but sadly it didn't reach its intended goal. Hopefully we'll get to see more of this universe's versions of the Combaticons. But until we get some more Combaticon content, go watch the pilot. In fact, even if we have more Combaticon content, still watch the pilot, because it's pretty good. The link to the video is in the description below. Who's your Prime? In December 2016, Hasbro released a poll that let fans vote on who would become the next person to bear the Matrix of Leadership. Basically, who would be the next Prime? The candidates were Hound, RC, Starsaber, Shockwave, Optimus Primal, Megatron, Ultra Magnus, Thunderwing, and an unknown character, just called Unknown Evil. This would later be revealed to be Deathsaurus. And so the fans voted, and in February 2017, we got the answer. Fans voted for the most boring answer, Optimus Primal. Don't get me wrong, it's cool that this led to Primal getting a new toy in a prominent role in the second worst Transformers series, but I don't know, man. Wouldn't it be way more interesting if, like, Megatron became a Prime? Or RC? Shockwave? Pale Deathosaurus? I don't know, man. This whole poll was kind of a letdown in my opinion. Bruticus's size. So there's a lot of animation errors in Transformers G1. One of the more frequent errors is combiners being the same size as a normal Autobot or Decepticon for like a shot or two. These errors are usually pretty quick. Most people don't even notice them. However, in the Season 3 episode, Fight or Flight, Bruticus shares several scenes with Galvatron where he's shown to just be a little bit taller than him, and he talks normally. Normally, Bruticus talks in incomplete sentences, like Grimlock. Here, he talks like a normal dude. And also in the episode, you can see various Combaticons doing stuff, while Bruticus is shown chilling with Galvatron. So in just a few quick scenes, there's 3 different errors for just one character. The Last Night Super Fan Event. In March 2017, Michael Bay had Paramount Studios fly in a bunch of fans and journalists from across the globe to California in order to promote The Last Night. This was known as the Last Night Superfan Event. Not only did these fans get exclusive sneak peeks at the worst Bayverse film, but they also got to go on Transformers The Ride, meet up with an animatronic recreation of Squeaks, forgot that dude existed, be given a tour of Paramount Studios, getting to see film props up close, like a life-size model of Bumblebee, and the dead grandma prop from Bad Grandpa. They also got to see a bunch of the Autobot and Decepticon vehicle forms, including Crosshairs, who I don't think you actually see transform in the movie. They also got to meet Michael Bay and his dogs, and learned some pretty interesting tidbits about Michael Bay, like how he has near photographic memory when it comes to what he films, and he's not really happy with how Revenge of the Fallen turned out. Overall, it seems like it was a fun trip. All of this information comes from Greg Sepelik, who wrote out his experience on TF Wiki, one of the best wikis out there. No, seriously, it's like TF Wiki, the Halopedia, Wikizilla, and the JoJo Wiki. The only good fandom wikis are like the Call of Duty one, the MCU one, and, of course, Wikipedia. A Greater Ape. This was a scrapped Beast Wars episode that involved Optimus Primal losing his memory after getting bonked on the head. But not only would he lose his memories, but he would also begin to believe that he was a real gorilla. He would then leave the Maximals and go out to live with a family of gorillas. There, he would meet the love of his life, a female gorilla. But then the Predacons would show up, and that would snap him out of it. Basically, it was going to be just a big old comedic episode. The only reason why this episode didn't end up happening was because it would require the team working on the show to create a bunch of new gorilla models, and that just wasn't something they were willing to do for just a single comedy filler episode. Because you gotta remember, they were on a tight budget with Beast Wars. The Lost Animated Shorts. At BotCon 2009 and 2012, 2 Transformers animated shorts were shown off. These shorts were fully completed, but for whatever reason were never released officially by Hasbro or Cartoon Network. And so, besides these 2 showings, these shorts remained unreleased and unseen for nearly 15 years, becoming lost media. However, in 2022, Kian Carlisle was able to convince Marty Eisenberg to release them to the public. And just like that, these shorts are no longer lost media. The names of these shorts were Starscream's Fantasy and Logo. So yeah, we got new Transformers animated content in 2022. Who would have guessed? Skipjack and Rampage confusion. In Revenge of the Fallen, there's 2 Constructicons that share the same body type, that being Rampage and Skipjack. And for a while, pretty much everyone was confused by these 2, including Hasbro. During production on the film, the Constructicon that confronts Sam and then gets annihilated by Bumblebee was named Skipjack, and you can see that name in the credits. However, in the actual film, Starscream refers to that Constructicon as Rampage. But in the Revenge of the Fallen toy line, Rampage's toy was yellow instead of red. This was because the concept art for Rampage was yellow. So Skipjack must be the one that confronts Sam, while Rampage is the bulldozer seen combining into Devastator. Right? Well, it gets more complicated, because Hasbro released another Rampage figure in the Revenge of the Fallen toy line, but this time red. So Rampage is red, right? Well, not everyone was convinced, and people debated about this for years. Until in 2020, when Hasbro shut the debate down. When they released the Studio Series Devastator figure, the yellow bulldozer that combined into him was named Skipjack, while Rampage's Studio Series toy was red, and his bio directly mentions his interactions with Sam and Bumblebee in the film. So finally, we have our answer. Rampage is the red one who threatens Sam, while Skipjack is this dude. It. It is a weird entity that only gets its name from an episode script just calling it, it. First appearing in The Return of Optimus Prime Part 2, if you don't count its extremely brief cameo in Five Faces of Darkness Part 2, it lives inside the Matrix of Leadership and talked to Optimus Prime when he made a little mental trip into the Matrix in order to search for a cure for the hate plague. It told him the way to defeat the hate plague, and that was that. No, really, from 1987 to 2015, it wasn't seen or mentioned. But yes, in 2015, it returned for a very brief cameo in the Legends manga. And nothing about it would be explained. It was just a background cameo. It wouldn't be until 2021 where we would finally get an explanation as to what it is. In the Generation Select special manga, it was revealed that it was the leader of the Quintessons thousands of years ago. He would lead his forces and invade Cybertron, enslaving Primus and trapping him inside Vector Sigma, in order to bring life to the Cybertronians they built. So yeah, it was a Quintesson. Kind of a boring answer in my opinion, but luckily IDW's reboot continuity in 2020 gave us a different explanation. Granted in a different continuity. In this continuity, it is the representation of Cybertron's experience with the hate plague. Yeah, it's weird, and I'm okay with Transformers never talking about it again.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
I won.
Whoa, $1 million. That's about how much it's gonna take for me to fix this mess. This counts as your break, you know that, right?
Let the King change your life. Play Transform Your Way at Burger King for a chance to win $1 million.
We now return to the Transformers.
Wolfgang gets scrapped. Wolfgang is a semi-obscure Maximal character who was robbed of his stardom. He was originally going to be a main character in Beast Wars, first appearing in Episode 7. However, because Beast Wars had a pretty limited budget, the studio behind the show, Mainframe, would have to spend extra time and money to create an entire new animation model for Wolfgang. But then the studio had an idea. What if instead of Wolfgang, they used Tigatron, because he would just be a small tweak of Cheetor's animation model, so it'd save them money and time. And the rest is history. So while Tigatron has gotten all the fame and glory, appearing in comics and even showing up in a new cartoon, Wolfgang sits in the back, forgotten by most Transformers fans, only appearing in a handful of comics. Though he did get a new toy in 2022, so that's pretty cool. Greg Berger toy. Greg Berger has quite the history with Transformers. He's done voices for various characters across the franchise, like Lockdown in Rise of the Darkspark, Stockade from Rid 15, and Jetfire from G1. However, he's most known for his role as Grimlock in G1, Devastation, the Prime Wars trilogy, Rise of the Darkspark, and Fall of Cybertron. He's so connected to Grimlock, he might as well be Grimlock. In fact, he kind of is Grimlock. In 1989, Grimlock received a figure in the Pretenders subline, and his human Pretender shell actually resembled Greg Berger. I'm not sure if this was a coincidence or not, but regardless, there's kind of a Greg Berger toy out there. Transformers Cyberverse Season 4. So Transformers Cyberverse went on for only 3 seasons. Okay, yes, technically there was a 4th season, but not a full-sized 4th season. As revealed by Maycat in a Q&A, plans for a 4th season of Cyberverse were being discussed before the decision was made to end the show. Some of the ideas planned for this 4th season included Starscream's return, where he would have gotten a redemption arc and would have had amnesia after almost dying. He would also have a psychic shard of Windblade. There were also plans to have several crossovers with Transformers G1, Shattered Glass, the Aligned Continuity, and Transformers Animated. There were also several characters planned on being introduced in this 4th season, like Ultra Magnus, Obsidian, Transmutate, Lightbright, Nickel, Rumble, Frenzy, Knockout, Thunderclash, and Jazz, who would be female. Despite Jazz's toy bio stating that he's a guy. Whatever, it's a toy bio, who cares? Also, Black Arachnia was planned to appear in the 1st and 2nd seasons of the show, but was scrapped. So it's possible they could have decided on introducing her in the 4th season. Dropshot. Dropshot is a pretty obscure character in the Transformers franchise. He has appeared in several continuities, but he hasn't really done much. However, his Unicron trilogy incarnation is pretty notable. While Dropshot doesn't appear in Armada, Energon, or Cybertron, he does appear in the Armada comic and the Energon comic. And in these comics, his character model wasn't entirely original. It was based on a cancelled Triple Changer figure that was meant to be released in the mid-1980s. The only reason we know about this figure is because a photo of its prototype appeared in the book Transformers Generations. And yes, this toy turned into a jet and a horse. Weird choice, but whatever works, I guess. Although this is a cancelled toy, so I guess it didn't work. Shockwave and Genshin Impact. So, in the game Genshin Impact, deep in the game's code, you can find a render of Shockwave from the Dark of the Moon video game. Now, I know nothing about Genshin Impact, but I don't think Shockwave is normally in that game. I don't know, maybe he hangs out with Mona. That's like the one character I know the name of. Some Genshin Impact fans have speculated that Shockwave's model was somehow used while creating the Ruin Greater, an enemy in the game. Thundercracker and Skywarp are Dreadwing and Skyquake. So during the development of Transformers Prime, Skyquake was originally named Skywarp. So yeah, Skywarp was originally going to be in the show. He would have been green instead of purple, but whatever, weirder changes have happened. This has led many people to speculate that Dreadwing, the brother to Skyquake, was originally going to be named Thundercracker. Since Skywarp and Thundercracker are one of the most iconic Transformers duos, and Dreadwing's color scheme is... well, it's not blue, but purple's close enough. Keep in mind, though, while the Skywarp thing is confirmed, this Thundercracker part is just a theory people have. If it is true, I can only assume the names were changed because Skywarp and Thundercracker already existed in the Aligned continuity, and they are extremely different from Skyquake and Dreadwing. Green Lyle Convoy. The Green Lyle Convoy figure is one of the most rare Transformers figures ever made. Despite it not being released to the public, there are at least 2 different figures out there. One was found on eBay in 2021, and the other is in the possession of the owners behind Transformers at the Moon. One of the biggest mysteries behind the figure is that nobody really knows why they were made. There's 3 main theories. The first is that this figure is a prototype for an unmade Green Lyle Convoy figure based on the times Lyle Convoy was green in Beast Wars 2 and Beast Wars Neo. The second theory is that these were made as gifts to the Takara staff members working on the Beast Wars toy line. And finally, there's the theory that this was an abandoned prototype for a store-exclusive figure that never ended up being made. Hopefully this mystery can be solved one day, but honestly, I'm not super confident it will ever be solved. Bump of Chicken. Transformers X Bump of Chicken EX episode is a one-shot manga released in 2019 that serves as a crossover between Transformers and the real-life Japanese alt-rock band Bump of Chicken. And by one-shot manga, I mean it's literally just 2 pages long. In the story, Bumblebee lands on Earth in the middle of a Bump of Chicken concert, and the band is just like, alright, let's just keep playing. Bumblebee's pretty hyped about all this, and scans Chama's bass. He's the band's bassist. This somehow gives Bumblebee a new form, the Sonic Blue Bumble form. After this, B gives Chama an exosuit and flies back to Cybertron with Energon cubes filled with the power of music. Now, this one-shot manga came packaged with a Sonic Blue Bumble figure. And not only do you get this manga and this cool Bumblebee figure, but you also get a figure of Chama, who is now a headmaster. Chip Chase died. So this is kind of a joke entry. Chip Chase was a pretty prominent human character in the first 2 seasons of Transformers G1. However, he was nowhere to be found in the film, Season 3, or Season 4. Despite other human characters returning in these projects, like Spike and Carly. Sparkplug doesn't show up in anything after Season 2 either, but at least he was planned to appear in the Season 3 episode, 5 Faces of Darkness Part 1. So some fans have come up with a theory that Chip Chase died sometime between the events of Season 2 and the 1986 film. There's not really any evidence for this, though. In fact, in the Japanese exclusive episode, Scramble City, which takes place between Season 2 and the movie, Chip Chase actually makes an appearance. And in several other continuities that branch off from the G1 continuity, Chip Chase is mentioned helping the Autobots in the years 2005, 2012, and 2021. But besides Scramble City, these are all pieces of media released years and years after G1 ended. And besides, none of these are actually canon to the show. Is there any evidence from the 1980s that proves that Chip Chase didn't die? Well, actually there kind of is. In the Japanese exclusive series, The Headmasters, Chip Chase was planned to appear in the show's first episode. However, he was cut, so he didn't actually appear. And yes, the Japanese G1 continuity branches off from the American continuity after Season 3. So technically, yes, Chip Chase could actually be dead in the American continuity. Hydrobot. During Super Bowl 50 in 2016, Schick Hydro Razors debuted a new mascot for their company and product, the Hydrobot. Basically, it was a razor that transforms into a humanoid robot. Obviously inspired by the Transformers franchise. And it didn't take long for this little guy to cross over with the Transformers. He first appeared in a commercial alongside Optimus Prime, where the two would do an epic fist bump to advertise both the razors and the Last Knight. Hydrobot would then make his way into a comic book. Released in May 2017, Schick Hydrobot and the Transformers was a promotional tie-in comic to advertise, again, the Last Knight and Hydro Razors. In this story, Hydrobot is falsely accused of being a Decepticon after battling some Decepticon drones. The origin of Hydrobot is then revealed. Turns out, he was created by Dr. Hiroshi Benson, who was trying to create the perfect razor. But then, the Decepticons show up and try to capture Dr. Benson. I guess to build more razors or something. That's when Hydrobot returns and helps Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Hound battle against the Decepticons, Megatron, Barricade, and Onslaught. It's pretty sad that Onslaught's only other appearance in Bayverse media is a promotional comic for a razor company. Anyways, they beat up the Decepticons and save the day. Since then, Hydrobot has appeared in various other commercials, but without the Transformers. But he doesn't need them anymore. After all, he's got his own cast of characters, like the female Hydrobot, who is the only other character in the lore of Hydrobot. Breakdown joins the Autobots. Poor Breakdown. This dude easily had the worst fate in Transformers Prime. Not only was this dude experimented on, his eye got gouged out, but he was also decapitated, and even after he died, some human was like, I'm gonna hook up my dead boss to this corpse so that he can control it like a mech. And so he did. But it didn't really work out very well, and the dude in Breakdown's corpse, Silas, eventually became a zombie. I don't think Breakdown deserved all this. This is just extreme. And he wasn't originally supposed to have all this happen to him. Originally, Breakdown was going to defect to the Autobots. This was most likely what the ending of the episode Operation Breakdown was building towards. So why didn't this happen? Because Prime's production was a nightmare, and they often killed characters off just so they didn't have to pay for the voice actors, and Breakdown was one of them. This original plotline was more than likely what led to Knockout being chosen as the Decepticon defector in the last episode. Armada Minicon Limitations. So Armada's toy line featured Minicons extensively. You could take Minicons and plug them into any Autobot or Decepticon you want from that toy line. However, that wasn't the original plan. The original idea behind the Minicons is that each one would only work for a specific Autobot or Decepticon. For example, Swindle could only be plugged into Starscream. This was changed due to toy designers being afraid that kids would end up breaking the toys trying to shove Minicons into random figures. That, and they were worried that kids would become so frustrated by this they would stop playing with Transformers figures. Powerglide is a cheater. Alright, so this is another kind of joke entry. In the G1 episode, The Search for Alpha Trion, Powerglide is shown to be in a relationship with the Autobot Moonracer. But then, in the very next episode, The Girl Who Loved Powerglide, Powerglide falls in love with a human woman named Astoria, who is very much in love with him. It's a really weird little detail. Honestly, if this episode came out before The Search for Alpha Trion, it would make way more sense, since in that episode, Powerglide finds out that Moonracer's still alive. Whatever, it's G1, there's barely any continuity. Also, Spike hits on Astoria despite him dating Carly at that time, so that's pretty weird. Revenge of the Fallen Crunchy Candies. In 2010, Hasbro teamed up with Awesome Inc. to release some Revenge of the Fallen themed candy. There was candy shaped like Optimus Prime's face, the Autobot symbol, the Decepticon symbol, and Bumblebee's face. Now normally, this would be a nothing topic. It wouldn't even be on the Iceberg. However, this promo candy is actually pretty notable because they were all recalled due to some of the candies having an excessive amount of lead in them. So yeah, you could have gotten lead poisoning if you had these. There's a lot of IDW hotshots. For some reason, in IDW's original Transformers continuity, there were 3 different hotshots. The first hotshot was from Cybertron, and he only had a very brief cameo in Drift issue 2, and he was killed immediately. In fact, that was the only panel he was in. Then there was one who lived on Velocitron. Unicron killed him. And finally, there was the hotshot from Commodus, who was the main hotshot. And sadly, he didn't really do all that much. He didn't die, thankfully, but he just didn't really do anything. One last thing about the 3 hotshots. The first one, the one from Cybertron, was only drawn as a background cameo by Alex Milne for 3 reasons. His friends convinced him to put Hotshot in the comic as cannon fodder, he didn't like Armada, and he was convinced that Hotshot would never appear in IDW's continuity. Rollbar in Dark of the Moon. So do you remember how I talked about Rollbar in Age of Extinction, and how he was created from the Sonic RS that everyone thought was a Cybertronian? Well, Rollbar actually has a pretty interesting history with the Bayverse. A different Rollbar shows up in the Titan magazine Revenge of the Fallen comics, but that's not what I'm talking about. In 2010, some random dude drove onto the Dark of the Moon filming set, approached Michael Bay, and demanded that his car be put into the film as the Autobot Rollbar. And because of this weird incident, several Transformers news sites ran with the story and reported that Rollbar was going to be in the film. So, is Rollbar in the film? No. Soundwave's mouth. In the original Marvel G1 comics, there were several different times where Soundwave was drawn without a mouth plate, and it never looks right. This would later be referenced in the original IDW Transformers continuity, where it would be revealed that Soundwave originally had a mouth. Not much else to say, just that G1 Soundwave having a mouth looks pretty cursed. But you know what's even more cursed? Transformers Prime Soundwave having a mouth. Ghostbusters. Transformers Ghostbusters is a 5-issue miniseries released from June to October 2019. Written by Eric Burnham, as the name suggests, it's a crossover between the Transformers and Ghostbusters franchises. However, unlike other crossovers like Mars Attacks and Terminator, This crossover is actually canon to the IDW comic series, just not the IDW Transformers comic series. This miniseries is actually canon to the IDW Ghostbusters comic series, so that's kinda wild. Anyways, the plot of this crossover is that the Autobots abandoned Cybertron years and years ago to escape the war there, and the Decepticons were just like, alright guys, good job, we won. But then, Gozer shows up and straight up destroys Cybertron, killing all the Decepticons. Thousands of years later, the Autobots get a distress signal coming from Earth, so they go to investigate. And this leads to the Autobots teaming up with the Ghostbusters to take on a bunch of Decepticon ghosts, a bunch of Kremzeeks, and the powerful ghost Killer Watt. This comic series also introduced the crossover exclusive Autobot, Ectotron, who turns into the Ghostbusters Ecto-1. Not only does he have a pretty prominent role in the story, but he also got 2 different toys of him released. One in 2019, and one in 2021 to celebrate the release of Ghostbusters Afterlife, a film that I keep forgetting happened, and is getting a sequel. There was even a Ghostbusters-themed Optimus Prime figure released in 2019. The Coneheads in Beast Wars. The original plan for the Season 3 finale of Beast Wars had Thrust, Dirge, and Ramjet, the Coneheads from G1, being revived in the Ark as the Maximals launched it. There would be a fight scene between them and the Maximals, only for them to be thrown out of the Ark. They would then smash into the Decepticon flagship, the Nemesis, which would have explained why the trio weren't in Season 1 of G1. Honestly, a pretty neat idea. But it was scrapped due to budget concerns and time constraints. Also, I didn't mention it earlier because I wanted to mention it here, but in those supposed Beast Wars Season 4 plans, the Coneheads were going to serve as supporting antagonists throughout the 4th season. But again, I'm not convinced that these plans were real. I think they're just fans misremembering cut plans for the original Season 3 finale. Star Trek. From September 2018 to February 2019, IDW published a 5-issue crossover series titled Star Trek vs. Transformers. The series follows the crew of the Enterprise creating an alliance with the Autobots to battle against the Decepticons who have allied themselves with the Klingons. Now what's interesting about this crossover is that Star Trek takes place in the far future. So the Autobots and the Decepticons have already been to Earth and had their little war there. But in this continuity, the Great War ended on Earth once humanity began World War III. Not wanting to risk battling humans and siding with countries, the Autobots left Earth, with the Decepticons close behind. What's also interesting is that Arachnid from Transformers Prime is part of the Decepticon cast in this miniseries. While she's appeared in other G1-styled media, like both IDW continuities and the My Little Pony crossover, her design in this series is unique, never appearing in anything else. Unlike the Ghostbusters or Back to the Future crossovers, which both included some figures, no crossover figures were released to promote the Star Trek crossover, which is really weird because Fortress Maximus turns into Fortress Tiberius in the story. Yeah, a Star Trek ship becomes a Transformer. I guess it would be too expensive to create a Titan-class figure for a crossover, but still, they could have made like a scaled-down Fortress Tiberius figure or something. Vehicle forms getting a second life. So some of the vehicles used to portray the Autobots and Decepticons in the Bayverse went on to be used in real life. For example, Sentinel Prime's Rosenbauer Panther fire truck was repainted and given to an airport to use. Though it's currently in service at a nuclear generating station, a similar thing happened with Onslaught's vehicle form, a Western Star 4900 SF tow truck. The exact vehicle used in the film was returned to Daimler's Truck's headquarters in Portland, Oregon. So if you've ever gotten your truck towed in Portland, Oregon, Onslaught may have been the one towing your truck. Then there's all of the military vehicle forms like Brawl, Blackout, Grindor, etc., and I'm pretty sure most, if not all of them, were returned to the US military after filming was done. Alpha Q was a little girl. So Alpha Q, or Alpha Quintesson from Transformers Energon, had a very weird story planned out for him. The original plan for Alpha Q was to reveal that he was not only a servant of Unicron, but originally was a humanoid little girl. Turns out, Alpha Q was originally the princess of Planet Q, and the princess's face would be Alpha Q's hidden face. This would have been revealed after the main human character, Kicker, would destroy their armor. This didn't end up happening, most likely because it was kind of a weird idea, but remnants of this idea still remain in the Japanese version of the show. It's why Alpha Q in the Japanese version sounds like a little kid when they talk in their true voice. No remnants of this plan remain in the English dub. Mission to Cybertron. From Transformers 2007 to Dark of the Moon, IDW was the company in charge of making prequel comics to the Bayverse films. Titan Magazine would also create some, but they were usually random stories that can't really be considered canon, and they never really tried to be canon anyways. They even made some for Age of Extinction that just cannot be considered canon, because Optimus Prime and Bumblebee are in their Age of Extinction designs, before the events of the film. Anyways, prequel comics to the Bayverse films were extremely rare after Dark of the Moon. Not counting the Titan Magazine comics, because they just don't really fit, and I don't really think they were trying to fit in, there were only 2 comics released after Dark of the Moon that attempted to be canon, and fill in the gaps between films. I'll talk about the more controversial and debatable one later, but for now, I just want to talk about Mission to Cybertron. Published not by IDW, but by Avalanche Comics, and released in September 2017, Mission to Cybertron is a one-shot comic that explains why Optimus Prime was in stasis mode upon reaching Cybertron in the last night. You see, after the events of Age of Extinction, Optimus quickly realized that he was going to need a lot more Energon to make it to Cybertron, so he stopped by some random planet that had a vault of Energon. As he tried to open the vault, he got attacked by some old Sentry dude who's like, "Hey, this is our planet's last bit of Energon. That goes and we all die, so can you just, like, not take any?" And Optimus is just like, "Alright, so I'll take just a little bit, so I can make it to Cybertron. You can have the rest, though." The Sentry then attacks Prime, and the two briefly fight, only for Optimus to win, obviously. Optimus then opens up the vault, and, true to his word, only takes a little bit, so he can reach Cybertron. But not awake, only enough to keep him alive in stasis mode. He then leaves the planet, and that's the end of the comic. Now, the reason why you probably didn't know about this comic is because it was exclusively released bundled with Blu-ray copies of The Last Night, exclusively at Toys R Us. Monka Spenka. In the G1 episode, 5 Faces of Darkness Part 1, a character named Monka Spenka is very briefly mentioned. This character is mentioned as winning an event during the Galactic Olympics. However, we never actually see him winning an event. We only see Jazz winning a race. This has led some people to theorize that this character wasn't actually intended to be Jazz, and they just used his character model for Monka Spenka. This is more than likely not true, however. In the episode, right after Jazz is shown winning, it cuts away to Rodimus, Ultra Magnus, RC, and Springer watching the Olympics, and that's when Monka Spenka is declared the winner. Not the winner of a race, just that he won an event at the Olympics. So Rodimus and gang weren't actually watching Jazz compete. They were watching a completely different event. It's definitely some weird scene placements, but I highly doubt they used Jazz's character model for a character shown for quite a bit of time. Especially since they created other character models exclusively for that scene, so like why not just create another one, or just like don't have Jazz there. But here's a new theory that nobody's ever thought of. What if after the 86 film, Jazz changed his name to Monka Spenka? Why would he do that? I have absolutely no idea. Scourge is Bayverse Prime. So before Rise of the Beasts came out, it was speculated by fans that Scourge was actually Optimus Prime from the Bayverse. There were a few reasons as to why people thought that. The first was that Unicron is known for taking people and morphing them into his personal warriors. I mean, Megatron, Thundercracker, and Skywarp got turned into Galvatron, Scourge, and Cyclonus in the '86 film. The second reason is that we are never getting a sequel to The Last Knight, so Unicron is just chilling out in that continuity. And finally, in Rido 1, Scourge was basically an evil Optimus Prime clone. I know he wasn't actually a clone, I'm just saying this for simplicity's sake. And since Scourge in Rise of the Beasts seemed to take influence from his Rido 1 appearance, people thought he must be related to Prime as well. So the theory was that Unicron ended up killing everyone in the Bayverse, and reformatting Optimus Prime into Scourge. And now they travel the multiverse eating people and stuff. This would make Rise of the Beasts technically part of the Bayverse, but not really. So when the film released, fans everywhere were shocked when Scourge's mask got knocked off and it was revealed that he was Scourge. Yeah, it turns out that Scourge was just some guy Unicron reformatted or something. I don't know, his backstory was deleted from the film for some reason. Supercross. Transformers Supercross is the cancelled sequel to Armada. It would have been set 3 to 4 years after Armada, and be about Unicron searching through space and time for all sparks, the purest and most powerful sparks. He abducts these all sparks, places them in his body, and has them fight it out. Some of these all sparks would be the Autobots and Decepticons from Armada, like Optimus Prime, Hotshot, and Megatron. Due to them being inside Unicron, it would result in these Cybertronians being mutated, some gaining the ability to combine, while the abducted Minicons became the hyper-aggressive Omnicons. Meanwhile, Megatron would try to harness Unicron's spark to become ultra-powerful, but this causes him to mutate as well. Now, because Unicron was grabbing people from various different timelines and universes, several characters from other Transformers shows would make appearances, like G1 Soundwave and Grimlock, Cheetor, Rat Trap, and all 3 members of Team Bullet Train combined into Rail Racer from Rido 1. Also, all 3 main Armada human characters, Rad, Alexis, and Carlos, would return. The show would end with the ghosts of hundreds of classic Transformers characters sacrificing themselves to kill Unicron. So why didn't this show happen? Well, 2 reasons. The first was that this show's plot was pretty complicated, and the second was that the name Supercross wasn't able to be trademarked. The series was pitched by Aaron Archer, and luckily ideas he had for Supercross would inspire other pieces of Transformers media, including the 2003 Transformers Universe toy line, and characters combining would be a huge gimmick in Transformers Energon.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
Summertime. Great for relaxing with friends and enjoying Pioneer's Summer Fun Special. You get 8 large pieces of golden Pioneer chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy, and coleslaw for just $6.99. And Pioneer's even got free coupons for a Universal Studios tour, with the biggest discounts including a free admission. There's exciting attractions like Transformers Base Camp, 2010 Spacewalk, and much more. Of course, Pioneer Chicken Summer Fun Special for $6.99 is a great way to make new friends, right, fellas?
We now return to the Transformers.
Tiger Track in the '86 film. So in the 1986 film, there's a bit of a continuity error. Sunstreaker is shown helping Cup, Hound, Huffer, and Bluestreak setting up a roadblock just outside Autobot City on Earth. But shortly afterwards, he's shown arriving on Earth with Optimus Prime and the Dinobots in a shuttle. It's a pretty minor continuity error, made even more minor due to Sunstreaker not getting a single line in the film. Some fans have created headcanons in order to fix this error. These fans like to think that Sunstreaker isn't actually on Earth, and that the character we see with Cup is actually Tiger Track. Tiger Track wasn't actually created until 2003, as a mail-away exclusive character that was just a yellow Redico of Sideswipe's G1 figure. So it can't actually be Tiger Track, but it's a fun little headcanon that people have. Dinsmore is 137 years old. Dinsmore is a pretty obscure character. He served as the secondary antagonist of the G1 episode, Prime Target. He's an old butler who loves to serve his master. And after that episode, he wouldn't show up in any piece of media ever again. That was until the Unite Warriors manga issue, Shopping at the Dark Bazaar, released in June 2016. And this one-shot manga takes place in the year 2021. And thanks to Prime Target's script, we know that Dinsmore was born in 1884. This makes Dinsmore 137 years old in Unite Warriors. I don't think people can live that long. Bumblebee condoms. Around December 2018, ads featuring a box of condoms shaped like Bumblebee and text reading, "I will always protect you," started appearing in Chinese subway stations. Now, obviously, this wasn't an official tie-in with Transformers, as I don't think Hasbro or Paramount would want people to associate Transformers with condoms. But regardless, it's a pretty funny ad. Megatron's Grid Mouth. In Marvel's Transformers, issue 15, released in December of 1985, the world would be cursed with the image of the inside of Megatron's mouth. When Megatron is reactivated in the story, his mouth is strangely drawn like a speaker or like a grid of metal. This weird grid mouth would never be seen again in any other Transformers media. Well, besides the UK reprint of this issue, which puts Megatron's grid mouth on the front cover, Long Haul's brothers. According to Josh Nizzy on Instagram, Onslaught from The Last Night is actually the brother of Long Haul from Revenge of the Fallen. Presumably the one that's not a drone. Now, this has never been referenced in any piece of media or toy bio because for some reason only Nitro Zeus and Berserker were allowed to get toys. Seriously, why hasn't there been an Onslaught toy? Just release one. As of this recording, Onslaught, Dreadbot, Bulldog, and Mohawk don't have any toys. And I guess Lieutenant as well, but like literally nobody remembers that dude, so who cares? Although apparently there was a leak about Mohawk getting a Studio Series figure in 2024, but whatever. Long Haul has a brother apparently. Although he might actually have two brothers. In the Revenge of the Fallen video game, you could play as the Constructicon Payload, although it was just a skin for Long Haul. And Payload isn't even officially in that game, as the many different yellow Long Haul drones in the game are never referred to as Payload. But regardless of all that, many fans jokingly refer to Payload as Long Haul's brother, because they look identical to each other. Outside of the color change, obviously. There's also a yellow dump truck in Revenge of the Fallen that forms into Devastator, and to this day, they've never given that dude a name, so maybe that's Payload. I don't know. Payload's weird. The Lost Lights bathroom habits. So James Roberts was the writer behind Transformers More Than Meets the Eye and Transformers Lost Light, both of which tell the story of the crew of the Lost Light going on adventures. There's action, comedy, romance, all the things you'd want. But there was always one thing on people's minds while reading the comics. How would the crew of the Lost Light react if they were using the bathroom and somebody knocked on the door? Well, in 2019, Twitter user DiscoVader01 created a meme answering this question. But then, James Roberts quote-tweeted the meme and gave his own official opinion on the matter. And with this quote tweet, we got some pretty interesting information. Like how Ultra Magnus only uses the bathroom once every 3 weeks, and Rodimus poops and pees in the sink. Obviously, this is just a joke, it's not canon, but I thought it was pretty funny. This wasn't the first time James Roberts had made jokes like this. In 2017, he revealed that Ultra Magnus loved vaping, and has a collection of vaping equipment. He also came up with the idea that Tailgate's teeth are flaccid until he gets angry, which I hate. This is an evil concept. I don't like this at all. Mobile Legends Bang Bang. In September 2021, skins of Optimus Prime, Megatron, Bumblebee, Soundwave, Grimlock, and Starscream were added into the mobile game Mobile Legends Bang Bang. A tie-in promotional webcomic was also released to promote this event, called Visitors from Cybertron. The story is pretty simple. The three get sucked into a portal and land in the city of Iridido. I don't know what that is, but I assume it's from the game. Optimus and some rangers team up and try to find Bumblebee. They're able to find him, and Bumblebee reveals that he got tricked by some dude named Xborg. Meanwhile, Megatron makes an alliance with Xborg, and that's it. That's the end of the comic. Megatron Reborn into Inferno. As revealed in an interview with Beast Wars story editor Bob Forward in 1997, Inferno was originally going to be a reborn Beast Megatron. The original plan for the show was that Beast Megatron would be killed off, and then revived in a new body. This new body being Inferno. However, this plan was scrapped, and Inferno became his own character. Great America. In 1985, Hasbro teamed up with the theme park, Great America, to promote both the park and the Transformers. On September 14th, 15th, 21st, and 22nd, kids could get exclusive Transformers posters and get to meet Jazz and Thundercracker. Now, these suits weren't exclusive to Great America. The Thundercracker and Jazz mascot costumes were also used at the Transformers Universal Studios tour at Universal Studios Hollywood from 1985 to 1986, alongside mascot costumes for Starscream and Grimlock. There was also a commercial filmed for Pioneer Chicken in 1985 that advertised this attraction, and this commercial starred a little-known celebrity known as O.J. Simpson. Finally, the Jazz and Thundercracker costumes would then be reused in commercials for Hasbro's Prizes in Disguise contest in 1986. And after that, the Jazz and Thundercracker costumes were thought to be lost forever. That was until January 2021, when a comic shop in Pennsylvania actually found the costumes, and they look very, very gross and uncomfortable to wear. Seriously, they look like a dissected Transformer. Which I guess they are. Ironhide's mask. If you look at promotional CG renders of Ironhide for Transformers 2007, or even action figures of Ironhide in this film's toy line, you'll notice something pretty odd about his face. Most of it is covered up by a mask, much like Optimus Prime's battle mask. Originally, Ironhide was going to have a battle mask that would pop up once he started fighting. However, this was cut from the film fairly late into production, as while it never appeared in the film itself, as I mentioned a second ago, the mask appears in a lot of promotional material for the film. Future toys of Ironhide would include this mask as well, since a lot of Ironhide's toys were based on his concept art instead of his appearance in the films. This mask also makes an appearance in the Transformers 2007 video game. Ironhide wears it throughout the entire game in the PS2 and Wii versions of the game, but he doesn't wear the mask in the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC versions of the game. Well, he doesn't in-game. For some reason, there's still some cutscenes where he wears it. Arby's Action Master Predaking. So in 1990, Hasbro began developing an Action Master figure of Predaking. This Action Master figure would have been able to become the rider of a transforming dirt bike. However, this figure only made it to the concept art stage before it was scrapped, though the bike would end up being made, and would be partnered with the Action Master figure Axer. The Predaking concept art wouldn't see the light of day until the year 2000, where the concept art was found in an Arby's parking lot. It was lying face down in a puddle. So how did this piece of Transformers concept art end up in an Arby's parking lot? Well, nobody really knows. But since this happened near where BotCon 2000 had recently finished up, it must have come from there somehow. It's a really weird story. Crayola Convoy. In 2005, G1 Optimus Prime was chosen to become a lucky draw figure. These figures are created exclusively to be given out to contest winners. There's been a bunch of these lucky draw figures, and nearly all of them are extremely rare. Most figures are only created about 10 or so times, and this G1 Optimus is no different. This was a standard Optimus Prime figure, however its color scheme was significantly different from your standard Optimus. This was because its color scheme was chosen by a children's coloring contest held in a 2004 issue of TV Magazine. So if you don't like this color scheme, blame some random kid who colored in Prime like this. Anyways, its weird color scheme has led many fans to give this figure the name Crayola Convoy. The Bumblebee prequel comic series is canon to the Bayverse. So it's very well known by now that Bumblebee was originally going to be a prequel to the Bayverse, and was only turned into a reboot very late into the film's production. What's not as well known is the Bumblebee prequel comic series from IDW. Because Michael Bay wasn't directing Bumblebee, IDW were given the go-ahead to make a prequel comic series to the film. However, because it's a prequel to an early draft of the film, the draft that was canon to the Bayverse, this comic can't be considered canon to Bumblebee and the Rise of the Beasts. But, because it was made to be canon to the Bayverse version of the film that got scrapped, technically, this comic series is the final bit of Bayverse media to ever be released. This comic tells the story of how Bumblebee and MI6 teamed up in 1964 to take out some Decepticons working with the evil organization Eidolon. Blitzwing even shows up in this comic series, and this series sets up his rivalry with Bumblebee. So yeah, if you're desperate for more Bayverse content, this is the closest you're ever going to get to more Bayverse stories. Anibot. Created to be part of the 1986 film, the Anibots were a group of animal-themed Cybertronians who would be part of the Autobots. Although it's unknown how sentient these dudes would have been. There's Simba, who would have turned into a lion, Pardo, who would have turned into a leopard, Shriek, who turned into an eagle, Clump, who turned into a rhino, and Thump, who turned into a buffalo. They would be able to combine together to create a dragon-like combiner called Dragon Beast. They would have been introduced as living in a zoo in Autobot City, and Ultra Magnus would release them out of desperation once Devastator showed up. Wheeljack would then help the Anibots combine, which is very interesting because 1, that means that Wheeljack originally had a role in the film, and 2, it suggests that the Anibots can't combine without help. Now, the Anibots didn't end up appearing in the film. This was because the animal-themed Transformers being worked on by Hasbro were meant to combine into a standard combiner, not some weird dragon thing. So they were scrapped, and the animal-themed Cybertronians would later be reworked into the Predacons. Lost 86 premiere. At the red carpet premiere for the 1986 Transformers film, actor Robert Stack, who voiced Ultra Magnus in the film, wrestled a bit with a dude in a Thundercracker costume. The same Thundercracker costume used in the Great America commercial. We only know about this weird little wrestling match between man and man in robot costume because of a single photo. And this single photo is the only piece of media that exists for the premiere of the film. No footage of the actors, no press pictures, this is it. This single photo. Cancelled Ratchet spin-off show. So remember when I talked about Unit E and how Hasbro wanted to create this big television cartoon universe between Transformers, Stretch Armstrong, Candyland, G.I. Joe, Mask, Play-Doh, etc.? Well, each of these franchises would have gotten their own show, including Transformers. After the finale of Prime, Ratchet was supposed to get his own show called Unit E, where he would be part of a team consisting of Duke, Rom the Robot, and a bunch of other characters from random franchises owned by Hasbro. This show would have aired alongside the other shows, like G.I. Joe, Candyland, etc. And no, this G.I. Joe show was not going to be another season of G.I. Joe Renegades. At least I don't think it was. Ratchet wouldn't be the only Cybertronian in the show. There was going to be a bot named Chopperface, who would turn into a dune buggy. He was mostly a normal Cybertronian, except for his head, which was that of a Dinobot. I'm pretty sure that none of the story ideas for this show were used in Rid 15 once it was cancelled. I bet you forgot that Ratchet was even in Rid 15. Remember how in Rid 15 they brought Bulkhead back to be part of the main cast for like the last 4 episodes? What a waste. Decipher the Decepticon. This was a sweepstakes in 1986 to promote the upcoming animated film. It all started with 4 different posters. Each of these posters had special glow-in-the-dark secrets. You would then have to take circled letters and unscramble them to figure out the name of the, quote, evil, horrible enemy planet who tries to dominate everyone. So Unicron. You then send in your answer and await the prize. What was this prize? Well, you had your standard stuff like, get a free VHS copy of Transformers the movie. But the grand prize was a go-kart designed after Hot Rod's ult mode. 5 of these were created for the 5 grand prize winners. And this is the part of the video where I would show you the go-kart. But I can't, because to this day, not a single picture or video exists of the go-kart. Nobody knows what this go-kart looks like. And honestly, I don't think we ever will. It's been nearly 40 years. There's a good chance that all of those go-karts are either destroyed or in complete disrepair. Secret appliance bots. In Revenge of the Fallen, we get a whole bunch of Allspark mutations, known as the appliance bots. They terrorize Sam for a little bit before Bumblebee annihilates them. In the film, you see a bunch of these guys come to life, like a toaster, a vacuum cleaner, a blender, etc. But there's actually some appliance bots that you can just barely see in the film. The more obscure appliance bots include the Cisco AeroNet bot, the cell phone bot, and the waffle iron bot. The cell phone bot isn't even technically in the film. You can see it get hit by the Allspark energy, but the scene of it coming to life was scrapped. Right after it came to life, it would start beating up the microwave bot, only for the microwave bot to then pick it up, place it inside himself, and then just cooked him. What a horrible way to die. Meanwhile, the Cisco AeroNet bot, you can actually see in the film, just very briefly. And then, there's the waffle iron bot, which I don't even know if I should include, because it was cut from the film. Kinda. The waffle iron on Sam's mom's head was actually supposed to be an Allspark mutation. There's even an animatic that shows it transforming and attacking Judy Witwicky. So it was an Allspark mutation. But because this scene got cut, it doesn't look like a mutation in the film. It just looks like a standard waffle iron.
Peter.
Bike Rider DX3 Time Rider. This is a single-button platforming game exclusively released digitally on the Nintendo 3DS. It was exclusively released in Japan. At the launch of the game, there was nothing relating to Transformers. However, on June 3rd, 2015, a Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015 themed DLC was released for the game. Bumblebee takes over as the playable character on 10 new tracks themed around the show. You can also find various Energon cubes in the level that act as power-ups, making Bee immune to damage. Also, Steeljaw and Thunderhoof appear in the game as obstacles. This game was later re-released as part of a remaster collection on the Nintendo Switch. However, none of the Transformers stages returned. Galaxy Force's Weird Continuity. So the Unicron trilogy consists of Transformers Armada, Energon, and Cybertron. And throughout the world, all those shows are connected. They're all in the same continuity. Except in Japan. While Armada and Energon were canon to each other, Cybertron was a bit different. Cybertron, or as it's known in Japan, Galaxy Force, was actually a reboot and not canon to either show. That's why there's some really weird continuity errors in the English dub of the show, because they literally had to make Cybertron canon to 2 other shows it wasn't supposed to be canon with. However, things get weirder. You see, the original plan for Galaxy Force was that it was going to be canon with Armada and Energon, but for whatever reason, the team behind the show went in a new direction. But then Takara came in and were like, no, it's canon. And after that, references to Armada and Energon were placed in Galaxy Force's DVDs. And in 2007, Takara officially confirmed on their website that Galaxy Force was canon to Armada and Energon, and it only took place a year after Energon. This causes some significant continuity issues, but honestly, this universe's continuity is perfect compared to the nightmare that is the aligned continuity. How does any of this fit together? Transformers Animated Season 5. So Transformers Animated's 4th season is legendary in the Transformers fandom. People love to talk about what the season could have been. We know of a bunch of plans for the 4th season, which I went over in my first Iceberg. Although that entry there is a bit outdated, I suggest watching these videos for more info on that topic. But many people don't actually know a 5th season was discussed, or at least thought about. While at a panel at TF Nation 2019, Marty Iceberg revealed that he was at least thinking about ideas for a 5th season. He revealed this by stating that in Season 3 of Animated, Beachcomber was originally supposed to show up, only to die. I know he had some background appearances in Season 3, but this would have been an actual scene, where he'd walk in to get killed by Shockwave. Because this scene was scrapped, Beachcomber's death was moved to Season 4. And this is where Marty Iceberg said that if somehow Beachcomber's death was scrapped from Season 4 as well, they would have made sure he died in Season 5. This is the only bit of info we have on Season 5. And even then, you could argue that this isn't even confirmation a 5th season was even being discussed. This could have just been Marty Iceberg joking around. Personally, I think that's what's going on here. But some people like to think that this is confirmation that a 5th season was in the discussion stages. And there we have it, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs. The Transformers Iceberg's done. All 3 parts. Done. I am pretty sure that I've gotten everything major enough to be in an iceberg. If I missed some things, let me know in the comments below. If I got something wrong or something like that, let me know. But please don't ask for a part 4, because I don't think I'm going to do one ever. I guess never say never, but like, I can't see it happening. I just can't see it happening. Obviously, I'll make more Transformers content. This isn't the end of Transformers content on the channel. God no. No way. So yeah, once again, like, comment, and subscribe. I think I said it earlier, but I don't like asking for those things, but I feel like it's like I kind of have to at this point. You know, I feel like I have to do it. That's kind of like everyone has to. It's a necessary evil. But yeah. So, oh well. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed. Leave it in the comments below, you know, who's your favorite Transformer? Did you like Rise of the Beasts if you saw it? Did you dislike it? Did you like it? I liked it personally. I think it could have been a lot better, but I thought it was solid. Like a 7 out of 10. It was pretty good. It was pretty fun. Are you excited for Transformers 1? Are you a little worried about the whole Chris Hemsworth voicing Optimus thing? That's kind of weird, but oh well, I mean, we'll see what happens. Okay, so have a great day, stay safe and all that, and I will see you guys in whatever video I make next. Probably another iceberg. Probably the Flash iceberg. We'll see what happens.
Megatron will never let it go. The battle against Decepticons will continue. I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message that SFV Autobots are on the Earth for one day. Last drop of blood will be drained for protecting the human beings against Decepticons.